Hey y'all, welcome to TXC Tells All, or welcome back if you're one of our subscribers. So I have been doing a few videos, one of them live and another one I did on the Darrell Brooks Waukesha parade attack and the trial that has been all over the news, where Darrell Brooks decided to fire all of his attorneys and represent himself in the case with charges against him, including 6 counts of murder, and about, I think, 71 counts, other counts for manslaughter for the injuries that he caused to the multiple people that were affected by the Waukesha parade attack, where he took his mother's SUV and basically ran through the parade, murdering 6, including an 8-year-old child and 5 other individuals that were there that day, and then countless others who got injured. So we were following the trial. If you haven't checked out my other videos, check those out on Darrell Brooks, talking about, the issues with his potential mental state. I talked about his mother's statement that he had frequently suffered from mental illness, had I think a diagnosis of personality disorder, along with talks about bipolar disorder. But all in all, he was evaluated by 4 different doctors as part of the criminal litigation, and he was found to not be insane under the law, and also to be competent to not only stand trial, but also represent himself pro se. So if you haven't checked out those other videos, check those out. Kind of talks about the details of how the case progressed and how trial went. If you have never heard of Darrell Brooks before, I recommend you check those out, because a lot of why he was in the media was obviously not just because of the tragedy that happened at the parade with the loss of life, but also because of how he acted throughout his trial. He was assigned public defenders or court-appointed attorneys to represent him, but he decided to fire those individuals and represent himself. He was not an attorney. He's a 40-year-old man. He has been in the criminal system before, but not representing anyone. But he has charges that have been filed against him in other cases, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, he decides to represent himself, and throughout the course of the 3-week trial, he gave the judge a really hard time. He objected to almost everything that the prosecutors asserted during testimony. He gave a really long closing argument. He was not prepared to represent himself in trial whatsoever. And many people have commented that his mental illness seemed to get in the way of him being able to competently actually represent himself. So now he has been sentenced, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Give us a little bit of an update on what happened. Now, if you've been following this, or if you've heard any information about Darrell Brooks, the fact is that he took an SUV truck, used it basically as a murder weapon, and mowed down 6 individuals, killing them. So the sentences, obviously, we can guess. And if you're guessing that he was sentenced to life in prison, you're absolutely right. The judge in this case sentenced Darrell Brooks to 6 consecutive life sentences. So a life in prison for each of the people that he murdered, without the opportunity for what's called extended supervision, otherwise known as parole. So he will not be getting out of jail. He's been sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences, in addition to, I think it's a total of 762 years in prison for the other counts, the manslaughter counts that were against him, in addition to the murder charges. So never getting out of jail unless he files an appeal and wins. Is he going to win an appeal? That's another question. So a lot of people were talking about his antics during trial. Was that enough? Was it enough to show that maybe he didn't get the rights to trial that he was supposed to? Are there questions as to what happened at trial, some of the judge's decisions or orders that she made during trial? Are there any grounds? Is there any room for an appeal? Or one of the main questions is, will he be able to get an appeal based on a question as to his competency to stand trial? Should the judge have allowed him to move forward representing himself? Does he fit the baseline standards to be competent to stand trial, not just stand trial, but to actually represent himself in trial, because under the law, he does have the right to represent himself. But should he have? Should the judge have ruled that he was competent to stand trial? Well, no, these are all questions, right? Before we get into that, though, appealable issues, because that's the question, right? Now he's been sentenced. The judge has made her ruling on sentencing. The next step for him would be to appeal. Is he going to have any meritorious grounds for appeal? We don't know. But before we get to that, in my research about Darrell Brooks actually has 3 other pending cases in Milwaukee. So the sad part about this is that this individual, whether or not you believe he has mental illness or not, he murdered those people, right? He was out on the street and he was able to drive and take an SUV and run over people that were out during the Waukesha parade, right? Even before that happened, and very, very close in time, just a few months before that, he ran over the mother of his child with that same SUV, his mother's SUV, breaking her leg. So on November 2nd of 2021, Darrell Brooks ran over the mother of his child with that same SUV and broke her leg and was taken into custody for that action. So the really sad part about that is he was in the criminal system and showing signs that either he was a danger to society, for whatever reason. Was he a danger to society just because he's a criminal, or a danger to society because he commits crimes as a result of mental illness? Either way, law enforcement was on notice that he was a danger. He was a danger to the mother of his child in a very similar way to what he did at the Waukesha parade. So sad part is he got out on that charge. One of the charges, so he has 3 pending charges in Milwaukee. One of them, he got out on $1,000 bond. It's a very low bond. And the other one, he got out, he has another 2 cases. He got out on his own recognizance, meaning a PR bond. He didn't have to put up any money to get out of jail. So he has the 1 charge for running over the mother of his child and breaking her leg. Then he has another charge related to that same incident, where after doing that and getting out on bond, he tried to convince the mother of his child not to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a promise to marry her. So he has another charge for that, obstruction of justice, obstruction of prosecution, or whatever. And then the 3rd case has to do with, let me see here. The 3rd case, he had 2 counts in that case where he was charged with recklessly endangering safety after he fired a gun at someone during a fight. So you have cases from 2020 and the case from 2021 involving the same thing, running over someone with an SUV. And on both of these cases, he was in custody and then he was let free. So, I mean, it really is sad, considering that, judges, I think they have a really hard job because they have to make a decision when somebody approaches to get a bond. Is this person a danger to society or not? In this case, unfortunately, they were wrong. They let Darrell Brooks back out onto the street. And just a few weeks later, or within months from the original 2020 charges, he injured multiple people and murdered 6 innocent people. Had the judges denied his bond, I mean, you can't help but think that maybe some of these things, violent things that he did after that, would not have happened because he would have been locked up. So, I mean, it's really sad to think that, he had done something very similar and he was able to get out of jail and just do it again. Now, whether he was doing these things because he was going through a manic episode, he was off his medication, or he was untreated for mental illness, I mean, I'm not a mental professional, so I can't say for sure. But it's sad. It's sad all around. So let's move on to the appealable issues, right? Was Darrell Brooks competent for trial? So there's 2 kind of prongs with competency, and the important thing about this is competency for trial and being insanity defense are 2 different things, and they have different standards. So with competency to stand trial, somebody has to have the ability to consult with their lawyer with a reasonable degree of rational understanding. They have to be able to assist properly in their defense. Now, he's his own lawyer. So the question is, was he being reasonable enough to assist in his own defense? Did he understand? And the second prong is, are you rational enough, and do you have a factual understanding of the proceedings and the consequences of the proceedings? So in Darrell Brooks's case, the consequences of the trial were life in prison. He could be sentenced to life in prison. Did he really understand the factual proceedings? Did he understand the consequences? If you haven't checked out my other video I did, I played some of the footage of him objecting, of him arguing with the judge, things that he was saying. Honestly, I'm sure many criminal defense attorneys watched that and said, he's not making any sense. He doesn't understand the law. He really doesn't understand the factual proceedings. So is that going to be an appealable issue? A lot of people are asking too, that are not in the legal field, will he be able to get an attorney for his appeal? And he might be able to get an attorney as a court-appointed attorney for his appeal. So will he decide to represent himself in an appeal? Maybe. Or will he wise up and say, hey, the first time I represented myself, it didn't go that well. Maybe the second time around, I'll get an attorney and see if I have a better chance. Because with an appeal, it's different than being at trial. An appeal is on the papers. So in other words, you get the transcript from the trial, that 3 weeks of testimony, judges' rulings on objections, all of that is transcribed by a court reporter, taking down everything that was said during the trial. That will be the record of the trial, and that's what an appellate attorney would use in order to argue, are there issues on appeal? It's not like somebody testifying in court. This is going to be an appellate brief that's written by an appellate attorney or by Darrell Brooks himself, taking out portions of the record and saying, hey, this is why I feel like we have a meritorious issue on appeal. This was not done correctly under the law during the trial, and therefore that gives us grounds for appeal. So all of that will be considered on the papers, and somebody will be reading that, a judge will be reading that and making a determination on whether there should be an appeal or not, if the appeal can move forward, and they'll go step by step through the appeal process. Well, so we'll have to see. Many people think Darrell Brooks will absolutely appeal. He has nothing but time. He has 6 consecutive life sentences, and even if the appellate process takes years, he will go through that process. But we'll have to see. I wanted to play a clip for you guys of what Darrell Brooks actually said at sentencing, because he was given an opportunity to address the court before the judge made her sentencing ruling. And it was interesting because many people said that he didn't show any empathy for the victims. He didn't show any remorse. So I wanted to play this portion because he did talk at the sentencing hearing for about 2 hours. But I just want to play for you guys a portion of that so you can hear what he said. Let me get to my screen here. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to share my screen. But it was interesting to see what he had to say about the victims. Hold on 1 second. Get to it. Technical difficulties, y'all bear with me. Okay. All right, I'm gonna play it for you guys.
Each and every victim in this incident, family members, those who lost loved ones, those who are still healing. I want you to know that no matter how you felt during this year, no matter how you felt yesterday, I want everyone to know, also the community of Waukesha, I want you to know that Not only am I sorry for what happened, I'm sorry that you could not see what's truly in my heart, that you cannot see the remorse that I have, that you cannot listen to all the phone calls that I've made to my family, that you cannot hear all the prayers that I've said in my cell, that you cannot count all the tears that I've dropped in this year. The truth is hard a lot of times. I'm not very old by age standards, but I've been alive long enough to understand that a lot of people are comfortable with hearing what they want to hear, being told what they want to be told. And being okay with that.
Okay, so before we go too deeply into that, I just wanted you to hear the little portion. And I mean, that's basically, I guess, was his form of an apology. Questionable how direct it was, right? Because he said he didn't say directly, I'm sorry to the victims, the families who lost their loved ones. He mentioned it, but he kind of directed it back to himself. But I mean, it was an apology. I think he did show some remorse. He did, say that he's praying. He didn't say he prayed directly for the victims, but he said he wants their family to know, he wants all the people who, lost loved ones, that he was sorry. So I mean, he did at least do that during his statement that he gave, a very long statement that he gave during the sentencing. So, a lot of people had commented before during the trial that he never, said sorry. He never showed any remorse. And that obviously was horrible because of the tragic event that happened. He murdered people. But I think right before he was sentenced, he did at least do that. So I wanted to share that with you. But we'll see. So he has these 3 cases that are pending in Milwaukee. Those will actually move forward and go to trial. He's supposed to have a hearing February 2nd of 2023. It was postponed because his lawyer is actually Robert Hampton. He has a lawyer for these 3 cases that are pending in Milwaukee. So we'll have to see whether or not he keeps that lawyer or he ends up firing that lawyer and representing himself pro se in the Milwaukee cases as well. But right now he has an attorney, and his attorney said he needed a continuance because he wasn't able to prepare for trial because Brooks was busy preparing for or representing himself in the Waukesha trial, and he wasn't able to get in contact with him. So the judge did grant him the continuance for trial for all 3 cases that are pending in Milwaukee until February 2nd of 2023. So we'll see what happens there. Will Darrell Brooks be back in the media with another trial where he's representing himself? I don't know. My guess, honestly, is that he will not represent himself in the next 3 cases that he has if those move forward and actually go to trial. You probably are asking yourself, well, he has 6 consecutive life sentences against him anyway. What's the purpose of even moving forward with the trials, with the 3 charges that he has or the multiple charges that he has in Milwaukee County? I mean, he's been charged. He has the right to stand trial in those cases as well. Is he getting out of jail to do that? No, but those cases will continue and there'll be either a verdict or if he takes a guilty plea, it doesn't seem like he's going to do that. But we'll have to see. So the criminal litigation involving Darrell Brooks continues, but at least the victims of the Waukesha parade have seen some closure with him getting sentenced to life in prison and having to face the punishment for what he did. So hopefully that, obviously that's not going to bring the people, the loved ones of that were the people who were lost in the Waukesha parade back, but at least it gives those families some closure. I'm sure the trial was grueling for them to have to relive everything that happened to them and deal with all the antics that went along with Darrell Brooks representing himself. So in the very least, they, got to get some closure to all of that this past, I believe the sentencing was this past Wednesday. So that's the story for Darrell Brooks right now. We'll see. I'll keep you guys updated if there is any more information on whether appeals are filed on his behalf or what's going on in the Milwaukee County cases. But comment below. Let me know what you think about sentencing. Did you think he was going to get life in prison? I absolutely did. Do you think he suffered from mental illness and he's going to be able to have a meritorious appeal? Let me know. Comment in the comment section. I always like to hear from our viewers and engage in dialogue with you guys. Thanks for watching. And again, if this is the first time you're hearing about him and you want to see what the backstory was, make sure you go back and check out my other videos that I did on this topic. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We post new videos every single week. See y'all next time.